So I've been thinking of this specific low-level tension that probably lives in the back of your mind too. You know that distinct texture of modern anxiety? It hits you at any moment. Maybe on your commute back home, maybe when it's late at night. You're struck by this question. What is the point of any of this? I'm Neha, and today we're seeking nuance in nihilism. A concept that, if I'm being honest, has been a bit bastardized by being thrown around so much. I want to speak to you about two things. What is nihilism, and why should you care? Now I know when I bring this up, like I did in my last video, the room usually splits into two camps. Half of you feel seen, the other half think that this is just depression with a philosophy degree. But the thing about nihilism is, you can look at it as a bug, or you can look at it as a feature. And look, I'm not going to treat you like you can't handle some complexity. So today we're moving past identifying a mood and saying, hey, that's nihilistic, to understanding nihilism's underlying architecture. By the end, you won't just know what nihilism is, you'll have a framework to know where you are in relation to it, and some tools to build upon it. Let's go. Right, so what's the point of any of this? Here's what I mean. You open an app and you see a meticulously curated day-in-life video of some influencer. You scroll again and you see the breaking news of some violent protest somewhere far away from you. You scroll again and hey, a hack for cleaning your air fryer. All equally weighted by the algorithm. A bit bizarre, isn't it? When everything is presented as equally urgent, you start to feel like nothing is more important than the other thing. This creates a strange feeling. You can't call it apathy, you can't even quite call it boredom. It's a kind of false equivalence. It's what experts call context collapse. But I think it's actually somewhere closer to, I can never say this word, the phenomenology of nihilism. The phenomenology of nihilism. The phenomenology of nihilism. Let's define it properly and let's start by stripping the word down. Nihilism comes from the Latin nihil, which literally means nothing. Same root as annihilate and ex nihilo. So the bumper sticker definition is life has no meaning. But that's imprecise, so to speak. In philosophy, nothing is a very specific kind of something. I know. At its core, nihilism is the rejection of the belief that life has any intrinsic meaning, purpose, or ultimate value. Notice the precision there. Intrinsic. Not that you can't create meaning, we'll get to that, but that there is no meaning baked into the fabric of reality itself. No cosmic rulebook, no destiny pre-written for you. Now hang on, nuance is important here. Nihilism is not equal to pessimism or sadness. It is the absence of intrinsic meaning, not the presence of suffering. You can be a cheerful nihilist who builds hospitals. What's important to understand is, nihilism is not a psychological state. It is an ontological claim. It is an objective statement about reality. It's not like, I feel like nothing matters. And it's more like, nothing objectively matters, whether you feel it or you don't. Even though it feels instinctively terrifying to admit this, and God knows I grapple with this myself, if we accept the premise that there is no external source of meaning, then we're logically forced to confront this reality. The universe is fundamentally indifferent to us. You're born, you will die, the universe will continue unchanged forever. Just entropy. And that's where the friction starts to build, because we feel like things should matter. Your relationships, your work, your grief, your joy, they have weight, they resonate. Why? Because you want them to matter. And all that's well and good, because nihilism says that weight is your invention, not the universe's design. The reason this gets confusing is because we use nihilism as a catch-all for many things. It's not a monolith. It branches into different forms. You've got existential nihilism. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Cosmic nihilism. We're all space dust and the sun is gonna explode someday. Moral nihilism. Morality is a social construct. Good and evil aren't real things. For this video though, we are focusing on the core existential claim that life has no intrinsic meaning, and more importantly, how we do and possibly could respond to it. We can't talk about nihilism without mentioning Nietzsche. But let's start by clearing some misconceptions. No, Nietzsche did not invent the term nihilism, and no, Nietzsche was not a nihilist in the way you would think. In fact, he spent his whole life trying to cure us of it. Here's a bit of interesting trivia that you can keep in your back pocket for your next party. Nihilism actually gained popularity as a political insult in 1860s Russia. In the novel Fathers and Sons, the character Bazarov rejects everything: art, romance, the church, because those institutions had failed his generation. But this wasn't just literary fiction. A real generation of young Russians were actively rejecting the Tsar and the church. If Russia was a political spark, World War I was the explosion. The Dadaists, the guys who famously put the mustache on the Mona Lisa, were reacting to the horrors of the war. They felt that if high culture couldn't stop the slaughter of millions, then high culture was a lie. That art couldn't save us, meaning couldn't save us. So you see, nihilism didn't emerge in a vacuum, far from it. It emerged as a response to the collapse of the West's moral and epistemic anchor. When Nietzsche proclaimed God is dead, he was diagnosing the rise of nihilism as Christianity collapsed. The moral anchor of the Western world was breaking, and he knew that nihilism would rise from the rubble. He called it a catastrophic event. But his real fear was what followed, the aftermath. He warned of the last man, a society stuck in comfortable mediocrity, blinking at the stars and asking, what is love, what is creation, simply to pass the time. The last man is the ultimate doom scroller. Alright, here's where it gets more interesting. If you accept the diagnosis that life has no intrinsic meaning, you can respond in one of two ways. Nothing matters, so why bother? Resonant of a heavy resignation, a sort of despair, a kind of escapism. That's passive nihilism. Or you could go, nothing matters, so I can build whatever I damn well please. Building something out of nothing, creating meaning. That's active nihilism. I wouldn't blame you if you think that that sounds very close to existentialism, but that's a topic for another video. So same diagnosis, nothing matters, very different responses. Let's sit with the friction of each. Let's sit. Of course, passive nihilism is the easier pick of the two. If nothing matters, then why exhaust yourself pretending? Why not just coast? Why even bother getting out of bed? The universe won't punish you for apathy. It wouldn't even notice. Credit where it's due. Passive nihilism does have a seductive gravitational pull to it. But let's turn up the heat. You still feel, you still hurt, you still want. The desire isn't going away anywhere, anytime soon. The cosmic scale does not just erase the microcosm of your lived experience. And anyway, for how long can you float? Active nihilism though, that sounds liberating. I can create my own meaning. But here the tension is a bit different. Sure, you can create your own meaning. You still have to build it though. You still have to create. It's all on you. Nietzsche saw it as the ultimate test of will. Kierkegaard called this anxiety the dizziness of freedom. Sartre said man is condemned to be free. Pick your guy, but all three of them are essentially talking about the same thing. That freedom to do things, to build stuff, without friction and resistance. Rule books, guides, scripts can be crushing. You're essentially floating in space without anything to push against. The danger is that without any anchor, anything goes can quickly slide into fanaticism. For instance, the Russian revolutionary nihilists became one of the most dogmatic people on earth. So the choice has to be made. Passive nihilism, no peaks, no valleys, no ebbs, no flows, just flatline, comfortable mediocrity. Or active nihilism, taking the responsibility head-on of architecting your own life. Alright. Let's do a little thought experiment. Here's the first question. Ask yourself and try to be honest. Where are you on the spectrum right now? Passively sinking into the void, scrolling, numbing, avoiding? Or are you somewhere adjacent? Creating, or at least trying to create, meaning. All while knowing that the foundations that you're building on top of have to be invented, not discovered. Or let me put it another way. Imagine a cleared lot, an empty space of land. You can build on it, you can leave it empty, you can sell it. The cleared lot doesn't care what you do with it. Because the question isn't whether the lot has intrinsic purpose, right? We clearly know it doesn't. The question is, what will you decide to do with it? The cleared lot is your life here, if that wasn't clear. Our guy Nietzsche gave us a tool for this. It's called the eternal recurrence. If you had to live this exact choice over and over, would you still make the same choice? It's not a solution. It's a grading rubric. Kind of a filter, a way to ensure that we aren't just sleepwalking through our own existence. Let me tell you what I think. I think the answer lies in how we measure meaning. We often suffer from this specific cognitive bias. We think for something to be real, it has to be eternal. We'll be best friends forever, I'll love you forever. But tell me this, does a song lose its beauty just because it ends? Does a meal lose its flavor just because the plate is empty? Why do we demand permanence from life when we don't demand it from anything else that we enjoy? Why do we tend to privilege the end state of things more than the current state that we're actually living in? Isn't the entire point of it all our lived experience? The final question that I want to leave you with is this, and I swear is the final question. Does meaning require permanence, or is meaning about the experience of the moment? I know what my answer is, of course, but I'm keen to know what yours is. Look, nihilism is a massive beast. I'm sure that there are counter arguments that complicate the picture, and that's good. The point of this wasn't to solve the void for you or for me or for anyone else. It was just to help you and me navigate this with a little more clarity. If you have a different read on this, or if there is any philosophical knot that you're trying to untie, then drop it in the comments, because I read all of them. If you're looking for more nuance in your feed, hit subscribe. I'm Neha, and I'll see you in the next one.